That's right. Because of the sudden nature of the event, Senator John Cornyn publicly requested the toxicology report be released due to rule out any foul play. I mean, yeah, because here's the thing, okay? A lot of people are going to be like, oh, it's poppers or whatever. But like, honestly, if you're Lindsey Graham, you go to Ukraine, okay? You go to Ukraine when Ukraine has depleted their munitions, their defensive munitions, like very openly, very famously. Russia is striking deeper and deeper into Kyiv over and over again. You go to a drone factory. You visit it. There's not a lot of aerial coverage. You do it very publicly. And then you fly back the same day and you die instantly. It's understandable to suspect foul play, especially considering that we have now entered a new territory with respect to assassination of high-profile politicians. Russia obviously has always done this, at least for, dissidents and the like. But Ukraine has obviously assassinated Dugin's daughter. There was another assassination attempt that took place recently this past week. And then obviously Donald Trump and Israel killed the entire command structure of the IRGC and also the Islamic Republic. So there's definitely a new environment for high profile assassinations. There's definitely a lot more appetite for it. There's perhaps a little bit more bandwidth for it, if that makes sense. So I would expect it to be some kind of potential high profile assassination from Russia. Like it's definitely important for us to figure it out, especially considering that the FBI, I think, was at his house investigating it too. Poison, drone, poppers, damn, can a ladybug catch a break? I mean, Russia loves killing people in the UK, though, to be honest, not crazy. No, it is crazy. It is crazy. Russia has assassinated political dissidents and has also attempted to assassinate or have assassinated, high profile Ukrainians in the inside of the military and inside of the political structure. But Russia potentially assassinating an American politician, that's huge. I don't even think that's ever happened. I might be wrong, but Russia assassinating an American politician and an American senator, that's war. It's obviously in America's best interest not to acknowledge if that's the case, right? I don't think America wants to now wage direct war with a nuclear power, direct war at a time when they already have their hands full with Iran. I mean, it's fine as it's a proxy war, right? But direct war would be something entirely different, something new. All my normie live friends think Russia killed him and the admin is covering it up. I mean, I'm not going to lie, that's not a very blue anon theory. That's not a very blue anon or blue MAGA theory at all. I think that's a fairly understandable theory to arrive at. Wouldn't Trump help cover it up since he seems beholden to Russia? That's one angle. I don't think that's the real angle because I think Trump's attitude towards Ukraine has shifted quite a bit, especially as Ukraine has been successfully ruining Russia's oil and gas infrastructure. Ukraine has a lot more leverage right now, so I think Ukraine is in better favor in Trump's eyes currently. So I wouldn't even say Trump is as hot on Russia as he used to be. But who knows? Who knows? I think it's an interesting story, though. I do think it's an interesting story. And we'll definitely look into it. We also got to look into this diarrhea situation, which I haven't really covered, but it seemingly is becoming a big problem. Okay, it's seemingly becoming a major issue So we're gonna have to look at the Dookie Gate, the poo poo virus, all of that. But yeah, this theory is so dumb. What would Russia or Ukraine get from this? I mean, Ukraine doesn't get anything from Lindsey Graham potentially dying. For Russia, it's a big fuck you. For Russia, it's testing the boundaries, right? Do you see what I mean? For Russia, they're not doing so great currently. They're getting, I mean, the strikes are actually hurting the Russian domestic attitudes towards Ukraine and towards the war. That is definitely clear. You got long lines at gas stations. The government has demanded. I mean, I don't think that's a reasonable explanation. It's about leverage. It's about leverage. Ukraine strikes at Russian oil and gas infrastructure. Ukraine destroys critical oil and gas refineries. Ukraine starts successfully targeting and striking Russian tankers. All of a sudden, Ukraine is able to successfully harm the Russian economy and create domestic chaos. Okay, that's leverage for Ukraine, and Ukraine has been gaining that leverage. On the Russian side, they have to push back. They have to fight back. They have to do something to also then reassert their dominance. So what has Russia been doing? Striking Kyiv over and over again, punishing Kyiv in a way that they hadn't done since the beginning of the war, or the special military operation, right? So for them, testing the boundaries of what they can get away with, this would be a huge deal. From the Russian perspective, if they were to assassinate an American high-profile politician, a huge anti-Russia hawk, that would be a massive point of leverage for Russia. That would be a fuck you to the rest of the world. If you can do that to America, if you can do that to an American senator, no one is safe. If you can do that to an American senator and basically have nothing, experience nothing in retaliation, because America doesn't want to wage a direct war with Russia because, you know, these are two nuclear powers. There's no precedent for it. It's a stress test. It's a expansion of the permission structure for Russia, what they can get away with. This makes every European country and every European politician think twice, because for them, Ukraine is not fighting this war on its own. It's not a secret. Ukraine is fighting this war with NATO, and Ukraine is gaining a lot of leverage by striking certain targets that they previously would never have access to. So obviously, from the Russian perspective, they're looking at the situation and they're thinking to themselves, someone's giving them this intel. It's either the United States of America or it's other NATO countries. Now, of course, even if it's other NATO countries, it's very high likelihood that it's still the United States of America that's, you know, manning the ship, that's allowing them to, that's giving them the go-ahead. We now know that the United States is giving Ukraine the go-ahead to continue striking oil tankers and the oil and gas refineries. This is, as I already told you, created a lot of chaos internally. Okay? So for them, if they were to successfully take out an American senator, probably one of the biggest advocates for continuing the war against Russia, that's a huge deal. That's a huge point of leverage. It's a huge threat. It's a way for them to, even if they don't take credit for it, it's a way for them to basically say, you better think twice. You better think twice before you continue your partnership with Ukraine. You better think twice before you give Ukraine intelligence. This is an act of war. If true, this is an act of war. It's a major escalation. There's not really any precedent for it that I can think of, right? Now, I'm just saying, I'm not saying this is a definitive theory. I'm just saying it's simply a theory, right? I'm simply saying it's a theory, but I'm telling you why it would be understandable for the federal government to actually investigate his cause of death, right? There's some people who are saying, "Oh, Russia killed him in Ukraine; they hid it." I don't think that's the case. Obviously, I think because there's a body, right? There was a body that people saw, so I don't think that Russia killed him in the drone factory or something like that. But I mean, it's not that crazy to investigate with the toxicology report to see if there's foul play. If Russia has in the past poisoned people and killed them with poison, it's like they're very common. It's a very common mode of assassination for Russia, other than defenestration, right? So, it's not. I don't think it's that crazy to look at the situation and demand a full investigation into it. So yeah, it's the timing of the incident. Like if even if Lindsey Graham went to Ukraine, came back from Ukraine, and then died like a week after, a couple days after, you would still be like, that's strange timing, right? But the fact that he just landed in America and then fucking perished, that's insane. You know what I mean? There's not enough evidence. I'm just saying that it is mysterious. Now, obviously, cardiac arrest or like dying of a heart attack or whatever after, long travel at the age of 71. His father had died at the age of 69. It makes sense. It's in the family. That's also a very likely and very realistic outcome. I still think it's worthy of an investigation, and it's not just my assessment. It's clear that Ron Wyden has also called out a investigation, and it's clear that the FBI is investigating it. So not the picture of ideal health even for his age, dude. Yeah. I'd say that there's 90 chance he died of natural cause because he's old and cardiac events like this aren't heard of and happen very quickly. But given he just got back from Ukraine, he seemed otherwise fine. It makes no sense. It makes sense to look into it at least. Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of poisoning could cause an aortic dissection, though. Yeah, well, there's two competing theories here. There's two competing theories. One is that's not the actual cause of death, and then they're just going to say, oh, it's a heart attack, he's an old guy. Or some kind of poison might have actually done that. But yeah. His heart exploded when he saw strikes on Iran. That could be the case. Someone wrote up the timeline and he wouldn't have made it back in time. Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard people suspect that he never actually made it back or something. I don't know if that's real. Obviously, people saw him. People saw him, right? I mean, his body was carried out of his house. So I don't know about that. But yeah. What is the obvious question? What would Russia even gain from this? Seems silly. Oh, major points. If you're saying what would Russia gain from this, you're wrong. Are you kidding me? Russia is desperate to reassert control over the situation and regain some kind of escalation dominance in the in the conflict. In its newest formation, where backed by NATO nation intelligence, backed by U.S. intelligence, Ukraine, as I already told you, are making significant gains, not territorial gains necessarily, but making significant gains in terms of leverage by destroying or at least crippling Russian oil and gas infrastructure. It's caused tremendous pain at the domestic level in Russia There are long lines. There are actually limits. The Russian government is implementing hard limits on how much how much gas you can put in your car. That's a huge deal. Are you kidding me? They are universalizing the pain inside of Russia in ways that they never could. That's huge. That's a huge deal. That's a huge point of leverage for Ukraine. Huge point of leverage for Ukraine. So for Russia, they know, I mean, they can punish Ukraine by blowing up Kyiv, which they've been doing, but then they also are trying to threaten, to the best of their ability, NATO countries, right? They have to do something to the NATO countries to be like, if you keep helping Ukraine, we are going to do something back to you. Now, in the past, what they would do is cyber attacks, right? Or every now and then, there would be like a random attack on critical infrastructure out of nowhere, like a random localized act of terrorism. Who knows who was doing it? But mostly it was just cyber, right? It was cyber terrorism, cyber warfare. That was a big threat. That's one way that Russia can tell the European countries, like, if you fuck with us, we're going to hurt you somehow, right? This is a huge threat and a huge escalation from the Russian side. We can get to you, and we can do this with impunity if it's real. If it's real. Okay? I'm not saying that's the case, but if you're asking me what would Russia gain out of this, what leverage Russia would gain out of this, is a huge fucking deal. Huge deal. It's massive. It's unprecedented. Obviously, Russia wants there to be no ties with NATO countries and Ukraine because the connection, like severing the connection between European countries and Ukraine, and specifically the United States and Ukraine is something that Russia wants. That's why Vladimir Putin was dangling a fake ceasefire in front of Donald Trump to successfully get Donald Trump to stop intelligence sharing and to stop their security cooperation with Ukraine in the beginning. If you remember, leading up to the Alaska summit, and Russia clearly had no interest in following through on a ceasefire whatsoever. They were just lying to Trump, and Trump was stupid enough to believe it. And at the time, Russia did have a lot of leverage. They had hardened their position in the eastern Ukrainian territories. That's a huge amount of leverage. It was they had so much leverage that they thought that they could demand additional areas of Donbass, additional territories that they hadn't even militarily annexed. Ridiculous, right? That's an understandable maximalist position that Russia is demanding that Ukrainians are going to say no to. Why the fuck would they say yes to that? But yeah, Russia has banned all oil. Russia is banning oil exports as the Ukrainian strikes are causing fuel shortages. This is from 6 days ago, and the situation has only worsened. Okay, this is not propaganda. This is just truth. Like this is not like Western copium or propaganda. There is definitely a lot of, like, Ukraine, as I've been saying, through drone warfare, through autonomous warfare, Ukraine has actually gained an unprecedented level of leverage that they had not had since they successfully pushed back the Russian forces all the way to eastern Ukraine. This is the maximum amount of leverage that they've had since then. For sure. So, yeah. If it's true, why don't we look into what Russia is saying? We only listen to one side. Imagine looking at Israel and only listening to the Israeli side. Wait, what? Russia will never under any circumstances give up the Donbass or allow Ukraine into NATO. They will fight to the last man, no matter how much Reddit, Warhawks, Western media says this is real politics. What is this? U.S. is planning an assault on Cuba? Jesus fucking Christ. God damn it. Anyway, getting back to that one chatter. Russia is obviously retaliating to this level of intelligence sharing and the additional attacks that their critical infrastructure is experiencing by obviously information sharing with Iran. So, it's a little bit tit for tat that way. America and NATO countries are giving the go-ahead to Ukraine and engaging in intelligence sharing with Ukraine so they can successfully strike targets deep inside of Russian territory with their drones and with their missiles, potentially. And then Russia is going back and helping the Iranians. There's obviously the adverse from the American perspective. There's also the adverse consequence of pushing Russia further and further into Chinese allegiances. This is obviously beneficial for China. The more Russia feels the pain, the more they're going to go and lean into China for components, for trade, for additional aid, for additional help. USA has cut all intelligence sharing when Trump got elected. This is misinformation on your side. That's why I said it's probably NATO nations that are offering intelligence sharing, but we do know that that America's given the go-ahead for these strikes. There was a Wall Street Journal piece that came out, I believe, or it was a Washington Post report, I think, that came out by John Hudson, their NatSec reporter, that actually looked at it and the Americans were openly celebrating these strikes and saying, like, we've given them the go-ahead. We've given Ukraine the go-ahead to hit oil tankers, like Russian oil tankers. And I'm fairly certain they have reinstituted intelligence sharing. So I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I don't think you're right on that. Sorry. So, yeah.
Attack on Russian energy targets. The Ukrainians have been striking ships, refineries, and other infrastructure as far away as Siberia. So unsurprisingly, it has the attention of the highest levels of the Russian government.
It is absolutely clear that the enemy is trying to harm the economy and, most importantly, create a nervous situation in the society. We all understand that this task is impossible to accomplish. The Russian energy system's resilience is very high, one of the highest in the world.
Resilience may well be high, but it's not limitless.
Hassan, just follow or watch the Crystal Files. You're entirely wrong and sound like a 70-year-old MAGA voter with your stupid spiel. Hassan, to learn about Russian espionage, just watch the YouTube channel, The Crystal File. Okay, take a week off, buddy.
And in the same meeting Wednesday, the Deputy Prime Minister took action.
The ban on diesel fuel exports went into effect today, which will allow for increased supplies to the domestic market. In July, we're also starting imports of petroleum products and boosting additional production volume.
Have you heard about the gamification of the war? Yes. They have units getting points for successful drone attacks, which they can spend on getting better equipment. Yes, I have seen that. It's pretty fucking wild. Palantir losing their top Ukrainian asset, though I'm sure they'll still do fine in Kyiv, just grease the right palms. I'm told Ukraine Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov has indeed been fired 6 months into the job, a victory for the generals with whom he was perhaps unwisely quarreling, but just as much for the corrupt officials whose interests he undermined.
By using petroleum products of a lower environmental class.
Russia is the world's fourth largest petroleum product exporter, according to the US Energy Information Administration. And this is why they're desperate for increased production. Russian motorists are now struggling to fill up their cars with fuel.
Over the weekend, my husband and I drove to maybe 15 gas stations in the Leningrad region. There was no gas. The stations were closed with signs hanging everywhere.
Yeah, this is a real, like, I'm sorry, guys. This is a real fucking domestic crisis. Like, what are we doing? The idea that this doesn't have any, the idea that this doesn't have any like domestic impact is crazy.
Couldn't get gas at all. Only today did we finally manage to fill up. This station is the only one we could find.
Ukraine has targeted Russian energy infrastructure for months, a strategic effort to increase the pain experienced across the Russian economy in an effort to push them to the negotiating table.
The real domestic crisis is a real domestic crisis, but that doesn't change the situation on the front line that Russia is gaining ground. Yes, it does. Yeah, this is a very successful effort from Ukraine, for sure. Probably the most successful effort from Ukraine so far. Could actually turn Russian public opinion against the war for the first time, at least to some extent. I don't know how much impact it will have, but this is how wars are waged, okay? Obviously, regardless of how despotic or authoritarian Vladimir Putin is, clearly he needs to have the backing of the public, okay? Especially because if it gets to a point where the public is like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? We can't get oil. I can't see my family. My grandparents are dying in the hospital. That sort of thing creates tremendous amounts of enmity. And that is going to inevitably cause the public to demand changes. Okay? It's going to cause the public to demand changes. Or even if they were to start revolting, for example, I'm just saying in the future, if the situation gets completely out of control and they start, protesting and stuff like that, then in order to stop those protests, you need to exhaust your resources, your domestic resources. It requires money and effort and more oil and gas, ironically enough, to send militarized police units to put down riots if that were to happen. So, it's a big deal. This is not something you can just cast aside. Aren't they losing 30K soldiers every month? I don't know what the actual numbers are, but that doesn't matter. They have a fuck ton of people. They have more people than Ukraine does. And they clearly can keep throwing people into the meat grinder, whereas Ukraine doesn't have that same exact opportunity, which is why, obviously, there's a lot of frustration inside of Ukraine for the continuation of this war as well. You know what I mean? So, Putin doesn't give a shit. I don't think he cares about that as much. But I mean, this is obviously devastating for the global energy markets as well, but it's certainly devastating for the Russian economy. Ukraine's drone campaign expands into the Black Sea. 20 tankers hit in the first night. 20 Russian Shadow Fleet vessels were hit in the Black Sea overnight on July 15th. 17 oil tankers, 2 gas tankers, and 1 tugboat. Total count since the operation began on July 6th is 136. Brother, I need you to understand, like, these are not irrelevant numbers. This is very consequential. Okay? This is unbelievably consequential. I mean, this is kind of what Iran is doing in the Strait of Hormuz, right? Of course, we cheer it on when Russia, when it's happening against Russia, but when Iran does it, everyone's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. The fuck are you guys doing? Chill out. How dare you, Iran? You some bitch. honestly fuck putting music over war footage though? What do you mean? Come on, dude. The Houthis do this. Again, by the way, when the Houthis do this and we watch those compilations, I get banned. When Ukraine does this and we watch those compilations, I don't get banned. Notice that there's a big difference here. Yeah. Why is the reticle a heart? I don't know, man. But probably because... probably because these are fucking Zoomers and shit, right? I don't know. I don't know if that's like standard operating software, but you have to remember, like, a lot of these guys are our age and much younger, okay? So this is the world that they live in. Anyway, so the reason why I'm bringing this up, the reason why we started talking about this is because of the Lindsey Graham situation. So, clearly, Ukraine has gained a lot of leverage. There's obviously some intelligence sharing that's taking place, and America obviously is aware of what Ukraine is doing to the Russian the Russian oil and gas tankers and the Russian oil and gas infrastructure, and they're comfortable with it. They're excited about it. Donald Trump's attitude towards Zelensky has even changed in the process, partially because he sees these compilations and he likes it. Donald Trump loves winners at the end of the day, okay? So that's definitely a change in the war calculation. My attitude on this is always going to be the same. Ceasefire now, ceasefire now, ceasefire now. Take advantage of the leverage you have, please. But it's also up to the Russians. Like, have they actually eaten enough dick and balls at this point that they are comfortable with the ceasefire potentially? Because there is a decent amount of leverage that Ukraine has gained in this process, right? I don't know. I guess we'll never know until we try. Otherwise, the eating of the dick and the eating of the balls will continue. Now, let's get into English.